Namaskar and thank you for tuning in to our weekly program on matters related to the economy from an Indian point of view of the world. On the program, Prime Minister Modi proposes major reform in GST, likely to increase demand and boost growth. The Trump-led peace maneuvers in Ukraine could lead to a revival of economic growth for both Russia and Ukraine, but at what cost? Online gaming bill passed by Parliament curbs online gambling and promotes e-sports. The strange case of the Japanese economy, a mini revival in growth offset by a loss in exports. But before we move on, let's listen to an important soundbite that sets the tone for our main story. Prime Minister Narendra Modi from the ramparts of the Red Fort on Independence Day 2025, announcing a proposal for GST reform.
इस दिवाली में आपकी डबल दिवाली का काम मैं करने वाला हूं। इस दिवाली में आपको एक बहुत बड़ा तोहफा देशवासियों को मिलने वाला है। पिछले 8 साल से हमने जीएसटी का बहुत बड़ा रिफॉर्म किया। पूरे देश में टैक्स के बर्डन को कम किया, टैक्स की व्यवस्थाओं को सरल किया और 8 साल के बाद समय की मांग है कि हम एक बार उसको रिव्यू करें। हमने एक हाई पावर कमेटी को बिठा करके रिव्यू शुरू किया, राज्यों से भी विचार विमर्श किया और मेरे प्यारे देशवासियों, हम नेक्स्ट जनरेशन जीएसटी रिफॉर्म्स लेकर के आ रहे हैं। ये दिवाली के अंदर आपके लिए तोहफा बन जाएंगे। सामान्य मानवीय की जरूरतों के टैक्स भारी मात्रा में कम कर दिए जाएंगे। बहुत बड़ी सुविधा बढ़ेगी। हमारे एमएसएमई, हमारे लघु उद्यमी, इनको बहुत बड़ा लाभ मिलेगा। रोजमर्रा की चीजें बहुत सस्ती हो जाएगी।
So let's put the Prime Minister's statement into context and the reasons behind this particular proposal. We look at it from a geopolitical or a geoeconomic context. There has been low external demand and that has been a drag on growth. Trump's tariffs have led to trade disruptions, as we know. The Prime Minister is proposing the biggest tax reform in 8 years, and it is going to lower taxes on consumption, so that is going to help in boosting demand. Let's look at our next slide, and this is about the GST, which is the Goods and Services Tax. We know that it was adopted in 2017 and it was billed as one nation, one tax and one market. And it was at the time the biggest tax reform since 1947, and it still continues to be. But even though it was one nation, one tax, there were actually 4 tax slabs: 5%, 12%, 18% and 28%. Then there were also additional levies imposed on cigarettes, luxury goods. These are the demerit goods, which are, you need to put certain taxes. They were already taxed at 28%, plus certain cesses went up to about 36 and above percentage on these items. So there is a need now to look at the reasons for these reforms. We see that there are certain difficulties in categorizing the goods under the slabs. We had mentioned all the slabs. For example, let's look at food. You eat a thali in a canteen, for instance. There you will pay 5%. And then we will go to a similar restaurant, decent restaurant, eat the same food, and you will be paying 18% tax on that. Then you can look at potato chips, for instance. It's taxed at different levels depending on its flavor. Then there are also some of the other items which come into this category. We look at, papads, for instance. They are not taxed at all. So we can see that there is some concern about how these items are also taxed. Then there is also bread. We know that, one type of bread is taxed at 5%. then if you go on eating better and better, or let's say better quality bread, if you look at it from that point of view, you take a multi-grain variety of bread, you're taxed at a higher percentage. Hence, we can see that there is the need for how do you categorize these goods. So the reform, it suggests very simply to abolish the 28% slab and put most of those items into the 18% slab. Also remove the 12% slab and put many of those items also into the 18% slab. So you see 28 and 12 being removed, all being pushed into the 18% slab. You keep only two slabs, that's 5% and 18%, and 5% obviously on goods that are necessaries, and which are fast moving consumer goods necessary for people. Then there is a sin rate of about 40%. These are what we were talking about earlier, which were being taxed at 28% plus a cess. Now you just put them into the category of 40% and say this is a tax which is on demerit goods, and hence you pay about 40%. So making it quite simple, just two slabs and then a sin rate of about 40%. The government could face some initial losses in revenue because of this. But we look at some of the reasons that what's going to happen is that GDP consumption demand is going to rise. So we are going to see that this is going to obviously improve the tax collections over time. I mean, even at lower levels, but the prices will fall, leading to an increase in demand again. So that's going to lead to growth, and growth will, compensate for the initial losses. So in a sense, this is what we see. But one of the things that is important is that we see that it needs the approval of the states, needs approval from the GST Council, as well as the state government finances need to be adequate, and hence this is an aspect that we need to look at, which the GST Council will have to finally, put together. Right. Now, before we move on, let's into our discussion, which is going to be later in the program. We're going to be looking at, Russia-Ukraine peace deal. Now, Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov has said that Moscow is ready to discuss the political aspects of a settlement with Ukraine in any format, but any attempt actually to resolve the security issues relating to Ukraine without the participation of Moscow is a road to nowhere.
In any case, as I've already said, we are ready for any possible formats. But when it comes to high-level meetings, they must be prepared in the most meticulous way at every stage beforehand, so that the summits do not result in a deterioration of the situation, but actually put an end to those negotiations that we are ready to continue.
Well, Prasenjit Basu, economist and author, is joining us from Kolkata. Let's first talk to him about the GST reforms. Mr. Basu, good to hear, good to see you. To what extent do we need GST reforms to boost demand right now?
Well, I think GST reforms are required simply because the biggest advantage of the GST is simplicity. Mm-hmm. In most of the world where there is a GST or a VAT, there is a single rate. India began with 5 rates. And it now seems that we are going to be cutting that to 2 and perhaps 3. Ideally, I would like to see just 2 rates. If you have an 18% and then a 5% rate, that is ideal. Frankly, if they want to have a sin rate, don't call it a GST. Call it a tax on demerit goods separately. Because the advantage of a GST is simplicity. It makes it very difficult to evade if everybody's paying the same rate, and it makes it very easy to collect.
Okay.
Now, our system, unfortunately, had, of course, it was a huge advance on the past, because in the past, there were state-level octroys, and we basically didn't have a single market for the country, which made the cost of doing business a lot higher. Now, we've improved on that hugely, but we still have too many rates, too many exemptions, So any attempt at simplification is very good. If we move to basically primarily an 18% rate with some mass consumption goods at 5%, that is a huge,
Sure.
huge advance. In the long term, it will be very good. Now, in the short term, uh, the effective reduction of the incidence of taxation basically means that there will be a further boost to consumption in a year in which external demand is being impacted by the Trump tariffs, the uncertainty over the Trump tariffs, and seemingly the rather harsh tariffs that will be imposed on India.
Right.
25% is harsh enough. If it becomes 50%, that'll be almost prohibitive for about half of our exports to the US.
Indeed.
Now, we are not a trade dependent economy. So the economy will probably survive. But if we can provide a measure like this to both improve the efficiency of the economy as well as boosting consumption for this year, then we get a double whammy. And so the GST reform is good in itself.
Okay.
I think in the long term, it's a huge positive. But the fact that it's coming this year provides an extra kicker, because this is a year in which external demand has unfortunately taken a big
bit of a drag.
hit.
Yes. Yes, we'll move on to our next story then, Mr. Basu. Do stay with us on this. We can see that, as far as GST is concerned, Diwali is the time that we should be looking forward to, because these reforms are likely to come in by then. But now the US president is credited with bringing parties involved in the Ukraine conflict to the negotiating table. Trump says that he is looking for a long-term solution and not a ceasefire. The reported peace plans, they seem to bring Russia back into the world to do business, and also promises plenty of economic support to Ukraine. Here's our report.
Donald Trump's proposed peace plan reportedly suggests Ukraine give up the Donbas region, already held by Russian forces, and drop NATO ambitions in exchange for NATO-like security guarantees. It also calls for freezing front lines in Kherson and Zaporizhia, allowing Russia to keep control without further conflict. The plan mirrors Russia's demands and could legitimize its territorial gains.
I find it concerning because I think Trump's only really representing his own interests, and he talks about the urgency of a deal, and I think he wants to get a deal more than he wants to get a good deal for Zelensky and Ukraine.
NATO-like guarantees may lack full Article 5 protection, and Russia would gain recognition of occupied Ukrainian regions. Also, sanctions would ease, boosting Russia's economic revival, especially through BRICS.
But I'm not sure, Donald Trump agrees kind of with this vision of Russia as an adversary, the vision that obviously the Europeans have and that Ukrainians have. So Donald Trump believes Russia can be a partner. He believes Vladimir Putin is someone he can work with, he can make deals with, maybe business deals or some other deals.
European leaders back Zelensky, stressing peace must be lasting and not a reward for aggression. India has welcomed the Trump-Putin summit and stressed on the importance of dialogue and diplomacy. And President Putin briefed PM Modi and President Lula of Brazil on the Alaska talks. Pragmatically, for Ukraine, peace could revive trade, draw investment, and rebuild its shattered economy, besides giving it plenty of support within Europe and the West. The Economic Brief, DD India.
Well, Prasanjit Basu continues to be with us. Mr. Basu, is there enough economic incentive for Ukraine and Europe in the Trump proposed peace deal?
Well, the main advantage for Ukraine is an end to the war. Ukraine ideally would have not liked to give up any of its territory, but it seems that the front lines will be frozen as part of the deal. Ukraine was looking for security guarantees, and Europe is willing to provide those security guarantees. But how credible they are is still somewhat questionable. So what the US has said is that US will provide some sort of air support to any troops on the ground that Europe is willing to put in place. Russia has basically said that in any peacekeeping force in Ukraine, Russia and China too must participate. Basically, they're saying a Security Council, the peacekeeping guarantee force, and it appears that Ukraine really has no option. So there will be some sort of solution, I think. We're getting much closer to a solution. The main advantage for Ukraine is an end to the war. The advantage for Russia, of course, is that Russia is likely to re-enter the global system fully and become a partner in negotiations about most global events.
Indeed.
So Russia will come in from the cold relative to where it was during the Biden administration, and the front lines will be frozen, which basically means that about 1/5 of what used to be Ukraine will cease to be Ukraine and will become part of Russia. In some sense, it's not a bad solution for Ukraine, even though it doesn't seem that way at the moment, because the areas that Russia will gain are Russian majority speaking areas. They are areas where the majority of people speak Russian. They always have voted for pro-Russia parties. And so, in a sense, you'll get a more integral Ukraine where there'll be no significant electoral support for pro-Russia parties, which was always the case in Ukraine between 1990 and the last election.
Mr. Basu, also will Russia, see this as an opportunity? There's trade diversification taking place because of the Trump tariffs, and Russia would see this, as an opportunity for it becoming a major supplier, of oil, rare earths, so many other things that it hasn't been able to do over the last several years. In fact, since Crimea, since it took over Crimea.
Absolutely. I mean, Russia is a major exporter of wheat in normal times. So if Russia returns to the world market, both Russia and Ukraine are significant wheat exporters. Prior to 2022. So in 2021, Russia was the world's biggest wheat exporter. Ukraine was the 5th largest. India can be a wheat exporter if it chooses to, but it generally chooses not to be exporting too much wheat. Now, the point is, we'll probably see a significant decline in world prices of wheat as a result of any peace deal, because two big suppliers will be back in the market, having been absent for 3.5 years.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Prasanjit Basu. Thank you for joining us from Kolkata and putting that into perspective for us. Moving on to our next story, India's promotion and regulation of online gaming bill 2025. It bans real money online games like fantasy sports, poker, rummy and the like, but it promotes esports and social gaming. Anu Kaushik looks at what the bill hopes to achieve.
India's upper house of the parliament, or the Rajya Sabha, has passed the Promotion and Regulation of Online Gaming Bill 2025 day after the bill got the approval of the lower house, or the Lok Sabha. Among other things, the bill seeks to ban real money games.
Those in favor will please say aye. Those against will please say no. I think the ayes have it, the motion is adopted.
India's online gaming industry is currently valued at $3.7 billion. The real money games segment generated $3.2 billion in revenue in financial year 2024, accounting for over 85% revenue generated by the industry. According to a report, India has 591 million gamers. That's about 20% of the total gamers globally. It is home to 1,900 gaming companies employing 1.3 lakh professionals. The online gaming industry is projected to cross $9 billion in value by 2029. What are real money games and how do they function? These apps allow users to deposit money, which is then converted into in-game currency such as coins or chips that hold monetary value. Prominent examples in India include Dream11 and My11 Circle. The online gaming bill aims to stop gambling, betting, and games that can cause addiction and financial loss. It also seeks to prohibit such games, their promotion, and related financial transactions. Anyone offering or facilitating online money gaming can face a jail term of up to 3 years, a fine of Rs 1 crore or both. Advertising money games carry a prison sentence of up to 2 years. Opponents of the bill have voiced concerns about job losses within the industry and the revenue shortfall the government could face in taxes if these apps shut down. They also warn that users may switch to unregulated platforms, increasing the risk of illegal activities. The government has said that over 45 crore people lose nearly 20,000 crore annually on such platforms.
The bill comes as a boon for esports as well as social and educational games. It gives formal recognition to esports, with the Sports Ministry preparing guidelines and extending support for training centers. Notably, esports will be making their Olympic debut in 2027. With camera person Monty Kumar Singh, this is Annu Kaushik reporting for the Economic Brief, DD India.
Well, Japan's economy is showing signs of volatility, with exports plunging to their steepest decline in over 4 years, despite a week of GDP data revealing a surprising rebound. Amid trade tensions and global uncertainties, the nation's fragile recovery is being tested. Diptanshu Kashyap brings us this report on the challenges and resilience of the Japanese economy. We leave you with his detailed report.
Japan's exports plunged 2.6% in July, marking the steepest drop in over 4 years, while imports also fell 7.5%, leaving a trade deficit of 117.5 billion yen. The decline comes less than a week after GDP data showed the economy had grown faster than expected in the second quarter of 2025. Analysts say US tariffs are beginning to bite, testing the resilience of a nation long accustomed to stagnation. Japan's first quarter growth revision from 0.1 to 0.3% confirms the economy had entered 2025 on stronger footing. On a year-over-year basis, GDP expanded 1.2% in April to June, down from 1.8% in the first 3 months of the year. Exports contributed 0.3 percentage points to growth, a sharp rebound from the 0.8 point drag in the first quarter. Despite the robust GDP numbers, Japan's exports continue to face headwinds. The July decline marks the third consecutive monthly fall, even as shipment volumes remain steady. Imports also dropped, contributing to a 117.5 billion yen deficit. Analysts caution that while the economy shows pockets of resilience, the decline in export value signals the growing impact of US tariffs. For a nation long overshadowed by stagnation, even modest growth amid global pressures is being viewed as a cautiously positive sign.
I think it's better to start raising interest rates early. It's important for the Bank of Japan to send a message that Japan is extracting itself from an environment where real interest rates are negative and return to a world of proper rates. The Bank of Japan should raise interest rates while the government restores fiscal discipline and reconstruction under a new accord that replaces Abenomics. I think that shifting the yen from its current weak position to a stronger one is the most effective measure to combat inflation.
Resilient domestic demand, solid capital investment, and cautious trade diplomacy give policymakers room to consider monetary tightening later this year. However, economists warn that Japan's growth remains fragile and heavily reliant on exports. The coming months will test whether the economy can maintain momentum as US tariffs and global uncertainties continue to weigh. Diptanshu Kashyap's report for the Economic Brief, DD India.